Vault Hunters has a lot of skills, and I mean a lot of skills. If only there was some way to put them in some sort of list so we know which ones are top tier and which ones aren't worth taking. So let's just jump into the tier list video. We've got our box full of skills and specializations. We're going to rank them all. Let's dive straight in with Cleanse. So Cleanse is extremely simple. It will remove one negative status effect from you. It can remove poisons, slowness effects, all sorts of things. It's invaluable, especially at early levels in the vault when witches are everywhere. The only problem with normal Cleanse is it doesn't make you immune to the status effect, so you can just get poisoned straight again if a witch throws another poison potion at you. So for me, that puts Cleanse sort of middle tier, because there's still quite a big drawback, but it is really useful. So we're going to stick this in B tier. We might move it later, we'll see how it goes. Now this big drawback can be entirely mitigated with the immune specialization. And you can take this straight away when you take Cleanse, because it's a level 0 requirement. You don't need any extra skill points for specializations. The only thing you're trading off is a little bit of cooldown time, but for that you get 20 seconds of immunity to whatever status effect you've got. I think for that reason, immunity needs to be bumped up at least one tier, so we're going to stick that one in the A tier. Now the two others are a little bit of a funny one. So the first one is Mend, and basically what that does is when you remove a status effect, it gives you some health back. The only problem is, it's on such a high cooldown, and you need to actually pump skill points into this for it to actually be that useful. I think for that reason, we're going to stick this one in C tier. I don't think it's trash, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to reliably rely on this for healing, and there's much better healing options out there. Rejuvenate, on the other hand, is different. In the early levels of Rejuvenate, it's not great. Let's be honest, you don't really need dark vision that much, but it's still okay. At the high levels though, it gets a little bit insane. What it does is it replaces your negative status effects with positive ones. Once you get up to level 6 though, you start getting regeneration 2 if you've got 3 different status effects on you, which is huge. Being able to get regeneration is fantastic. The real thing though is once you get down to 8, 9 and 10 to get levels in luck. So what you can do, especially if you've got danks, is just bring your own ways of debuffing yourself, maybe poison potions or weakening potions or something like that, splash them on yourself, use Rejuvenate, and get these levels in luck. It is very, very, very powerful. And even though you do need to sink an absolute ton of points into Cleanse to get the really good effects are so good that it's definitely worth doing. Because it has that big drawback, it's going in A tier. Alright, let's move on to my favourite skill, Dash. Now Dash goes in S tier, there's no even slight compromise on that. You can fly an Elytra without rockets, you can dash up to higher ledges, you can get around the vault so much quicker with it, and it's got a ridiculously short cooldown. It's just amazing. It really is. The specializations are a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. Bullet is quite good for AoE damage, but it does put yourself in quite a bit of harm's way. It also reduces your damage output based on the amount of things that you actually damage with it, which in the middle of a vault, probably not the best thing. It's okay if you're hunting soul shards, but there's a lot better options, to be completely honest with you. I'm putting Bullet right down in D tier. In general, there's much, much better options. Power Up, on the other hand, is better. It's not amazing, and it comes with a lot longer cooldown, but you do get an increase to your damage output. The main problem I've found is it's quite difficult to sort of gauge your dash very well when you're trying to use Power Up, and then by the time you've dashed off and then come back, your Power Up's ended. That's just me being bad with it though. Overall, it's a decent ability. It's not really game changing. It helps you a little bit with damage output, but then so do levels in strength. So I think I'm going to put this one in B tier. Now, Recharge is my favourite, by far, ability in the entire game, because you can get so much passive healing as you're going through the vault. Because you're going to be dashing around anyway, why not get that additional bit of healing? It does increase the cooldown of dash by quite a lot, and it can make a difference to how fast you go through the vault, but in general, that healing is just incredible. If you manage to get all the way down to dash 10, you can theoretically dash 107 times per vault, which is 535 hearts worth of healing, or the equivalent of 133 healing 2 potions. Would you rather not have to brew 133 healing potions every vault and still benefit from dash? Absolutely. So it's going in S tier alongside normal dash. So there is one addition to S tier that I've not put in this chest, and that is my subscribers. You're all amazing, and obviously you go into S tier. If you want to join them, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We are incredibly close to 500 subscribers, and then I can actually chat to you guys through the community features. It will be great. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. So Execute has been one of the hardest abilities for me to place on this list, because at low levels, Execute is basically trash, and it's not worth taking at all. At higher levels, it becomes ridiculously overpowered. So first off, let me say there's not really any point in using normal Execute. If you're using normal Execute, you should be using combo. It has exactly the same damage, but it has a chance to not go on to cooldown. But knocking off 5% of a creature's health with a 3-minute cooldown, I think normal Execute we're going to put right down in D tier, just purely because you should be using combo. Combo has the chance to save you the cooldown, so I think we'll put that a little bit higher. We'll put that into C tier. Now, my problem with precision, you know what, I'll just show you. So we summon a boss and get it down to half health, and then we equip a wooden sword, and yeah, it is a little bit broken, and I do like it at higher levels, but it also takes at least 20 skill points to make it useful. I think we're going to put it in B tier, because the drawbacks are just so huge that there are just better options. I mean, first level in Shaman will do so much work for you that this is probably not even necessary. Moving on to something a little bit easier to place, we have Ghostwalker. Now, Ghostwalker is going to give you a little bit of invulnerability so that you can get away in a panic situation. It is really good to have as sort of a, oh, damn, I don't know what's going on, let's just quickly get out of there sort of button. It's also quite useful in the overworld because it gives you speed boost, which, you know, never a bad thing. I was going to put it in C tier, but it's actually a little bit more useful than that, so I think it's going to go in B tier. Ghostwalker Warrior is a worse version of Rampage mixed with a worse version of Ghostwalker, because you're giving up your invulnerability for a little bit of damage, but that damage only lasts a couple of seconds before it wears off, whereas Rampage, you get it for sort of 20 seconds. If you're really lacking on damage, pick up Rampage and use it alongside Ghostwalker, but I don't see the benefit, to be completely honest with you. I'm putting Warrior right down in D tier. Recovery does give you some regeneration levels, which if you're using Ghostwalker as a panic ability, that can be quite useful, but realistically, if you're using it, you want to use it as a sudden getaway, so the invulnerability is going to be better. Yeah, I think this one, not amazing, also not terrible. I think it's going to go into C tier. Ethereal is where I think Ghostwalker gets its specialization right, because you get parry instead of that invulnerability, but it lasts significantly longer, so there's a much bigger window for you to take advantage of it. Really good in things like boss fights. I actually think this is going to be an improvement on base Ghostwalker, especially as you get more tanky as time goes on. It does a lot of things right, so I think A tier is definitely the place for it. Oh, Hunter, the thing that will cause you more anxiety than anything else when you see that you're entirely surrounded by mobs. It's just not a great ability. I'm not quite sure when this would be useful, so yeah, D tier for sure. Finder is slightly better because you can locate chests, which is really good for dig site rooms. However, the one big drawback is player experience. The longer that you play the game, the more you're going to know where the chests are anyway. It's going to highlight a lot of chests that will encourage you to go off the sort of main track and waste a bunch of your time. So it's going in C tier because it's better than normal Hunter. It's just not great. Tracker is a similar sort of situation. It's really good to know where the spawners are if you're collecting cage dust, or if you really, really want to avoid them, or potentially even in a scavenger vault actually. That does help a little bit. You know what, I'm going to boost this up a bit. I'm going to put this in B tier because in a scavenger vault you want to know where those spawners are, so that can be quite useful, but in general, not the best ability. It's okay. Observer is very good. Observer is great for finding altars and finding treasure rooms and things like that, so it, again, B tier I think it's a solid foundation. It'll find those for you. By the time that you get to there though, because you need level 75 to unlock it, you're probably going to have a good idea of how to locate these things effectively anyway. So yeah, it limited utility, but it is much better than normal hunter. Mega jump goes boing. And honestly, I kind of want to put it in S tier just for that. But nonetheless, I think I'm going to stick this one in A tier because Mega Jump is really good for being able to move around the vault, really useful in combination with Dash, whether that's in a vault to get up to high places, or if you're using it with Elytra, you get a decent amount of elevation from it. It's not as good as Dash because you can't direct it, but it's good. I really enjoy using it. That all comes crumbling down when you have Drill, because Drill has one use and one use only, which is to get yourself out of strongholds quickly, which, I mean, does that come up that much? Otherwise, you're basically just filling your inventory with a load of rubbish, because it'll just break every block and then you'll have to do inventory organization and it's just going to slow you down. It's going in D tier. It's not great. Mega Jump Fart, on the other hand, that is a really good shockwave that sends enemies back by quite a ridiculous amount, to be honest, and it's really good if you use it with Ghost Walker or with Summon Eternal, because you're going to be able to get a lot of space very quickly and it'll just stop you being mobbed. Again, not particularly massive in the way that it's going to change the way you play, and you do sacrifice a lot of jump height for it. I think this one, it's good, it's not amazing, so I think this one's going to go into C tier. Now, Shockwave is one that I massively underestimated, and I've done some testing since, and it is really good for soul shard farming. Soul shards are a huge part of the game, and they will save you a lot of resources, so being able to farm those shards effectively is extremely useful, especially in crowded vaults. So, this one I'm going to put in B tier. It's useful, it's specialised. It doesn't feel like Mega Jump, to be completely honest with you. You don't get any jump height, you're just doing damage. It's a decent amount of damage, and you can combo it with a bunch of other stuff, so it's a good sort of middle of the pack ability, and it's great when you actually do need to use it. It's Rampage time. I love talking about Rampage. So Rampage is going to give you a flat boost to your damage, and you can melt through things very quickly with only a couple of levels in Rampage. There's not really a huge downside to it. You can just start melting things. I use it whenever I'm getting mobbed. I use it for boss fights. Basically, anywhere I need any extra damage, Rampage is my go-to ability for it. It has to go in A tier. It's incredibly useful, but it's not entirely game-changing. Whereas Rampage Shaman, and most of you will be familiar with Shaman, is game-changing. It makes boss fights so ridiculously easy, and it is getting nerfed. Just bear that in mind. At time of recording, it's extremely overpowered, but Iskall has confirmed that it is going to get nerfed. We don't know what that nerf's going to look like yet, so it's overpowered now, so it's S tier. It might drop down in the future. What Shaman does is it spreads the additional damage over a long period of time, and it gives you much more damage than normal Rampage does, which sounds like a fair compromise, but because of the way that bosses regenerate if you've not hit them in a while, you can just stack a load of damage on, wait around a corner and hide, and the boss will just die because it can't regenerate. You've got a bunch of stacks of damage going on, and it will just eventually kill it. Really, really useful, trivializes boss fights. I understand why it's getting nerfed, but I'm still a little bit sad about it. Berserk is good, but it's not as good as normal Rampage, because normal Rampage will give you a decent chunk of damage boost, but it will only last for 20 seconds. Rampage will allow you to keep extending that with every hit that you do, but the damage boost is a lot lower. And there's not a massive amount of times that you're going to need a long period with a big amount of damage boost that you're constantly attacking things, so I think that drops it down a tier and it's going into B tier. Vampire, it just adds additional life leech onto all of your hits. Now, is it good enough to put it all the way up in S tier? I am not convinced. I think because you're having to give up Shaman to be able to use Vampire, that is a big thing, because that life leech can be got through gear. You can get the healing from other abilities. It's nice. It's not game breaking, really. So I think I'm going to put it in A tier. It's just, Shaman's just so overpowered. What can I say? So Summon Eternal. Now this is a little bit of an interesting one because it kind of depends on what gear you've got to equip your Eternals with. So, in general, Summon Eternal is going to give you good distraction, it's going to give you additional damage, so Summon Eternal I am putting into A tier. It's extremely powerful as a standalone ability, it's also extremely powerful combined with other abilities that give you crowd control or additional damage, and it's really good for boss fights because they can just tank some hits. They're probably going to die, but you can resurrect them pretty easily. Your one main downside of Summon Eternals is that you need to actually create the Eternals yourself, which is quite expensive. You need a POG to start with to make the cryo chamber, and then you need 40 trader cores to even make your first one. So it can be a little bit challenging, but as an ability on its own, it is really good. Now this gets even better with Army. Army is going to let you summon additional Eternals, which, as you would probably expect, the more Eternals you've got, the better it is, and each Eternal has an aura around it, or it has additional effects, which can keep stacking the more and more you've got. As long as you have got the gear to be able to equip your Eternals with good armor and good weapons, Army is an S tier ability. Now, Ghoul I'm going to put in A tier alongside just normal Summon Eternal. It does boost them up, but it's a similar situation to Rampage. It gives it a boost, but not enough to push it into S tier. It allows your Eternals to debuff enemies as they're attacking you, and to get to the higher levels, it requires a lot of points to actually get the really, really good debuffs. Now, Overpower I think is significantly worse than your normal Summon Eternal, because you're reducing the amount of Eternals you can get, which means less distraction and less damage. And if you want to get to that double damage at the highest level, you're going to need to sink over 40 points into Summon Eternals, whereas you can get 100% damage increase just by summoning a second Eternal using just 1 point in Summon Eternal Army. I am going to put Overpower into C tier. I don't think it's as good as normal Summon Eternal, and it's definitely not better than Army. So Tank is good. It's not game-changing by any means, but it is certainly useful to be able to get you out of rough situations, or to just tank a bunch of hits from a boss fight. Overall, really good, not really any downsides to it, but it's not game-changing, so it's going into A tier. And to be honest, most of them are A tier, because Spikes is going to reflect damage back to the attacker, which gets extremely good for boss fights when you're reflecting 200% of damage taken. And Ghost is going to give you parry chance instead of resistance. Being not hit is just as good as reducing the amount of damage that you take. If anything, I'd say that's a little bit better. So all three of those I'm putting in A tier. The one exception to this, though, is Chill. So Chill takes away basically all of your resistance. It drops from 25% all the way down to 2% at first level. And all it does is it applies a slowness effect to creatures nearby, which is not that useful, to be honest. You get an extra point in speed, you're going to basically have the same net effect. I don't think Chill is worth taking. I think it's a really bad ability, and I'm going to be putting that one in D tier as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Vea Miner. Now, Vea Miner isn't going to help you a huge amount in the vault, but it is going to help you a ridiculous amount outside of the vault. Although, granted, if you get a mine room, it can be really useful. Basic Vea Miner is really good. There's not really much more to say about it. It breaks a bunch of blocks at once. It makes you mine quicker. You can find vault ores, diamonds, all sorts, a lot quicker than you can normally, and it just makes mining a lot less tedious. It is, however, going into B tier for one reason and one reason only, and that's that you should be using one of the other specializations. Finesse is going to give you chance to not use any of the durability on your tools, so that's going to make it last a lot longer, and I'll tell you that 60% reduction when you're mining 64 blocks at once is huge. I'd really recommend it. It's going to bump it up a tier, and it's going into A tier. Now, Void Vein Miner, I don't think is worth it, because you need level 75 before you can unlock Void Vein Miner, and at that point, you're probably going to have other solutions for getting rid of blocks that you don't want within a vault. So yeah, it's not an improvement on normal Vein Miner really, so I guess it's going in B tier as well. I was very tempted to drop it down, but you can still use it the same way that normal Vein Miner's used, so B tier it is. The last specialization we've got is Fortune. Now, Fortune gives you additional Fortune levels, +1 for the first 4 ranks and +2 for the last one. I honestly can't overstate how important this one is. It goes straight into S tier, there's no doubt about this. Probably 95% of the modded items require some form of Vault Gem, and breaking ores with higher Fortune gives you more Vault Gems. It's going to allow you to progress quicker, you're going to get better stuff, you're going to have more gems if you're trading on a server. There is no downside to the Fortune enchantment. It's absolutely an S tier ability. So that is the completed tier list. It has been a journey, to say the least. I hope you found some of it useful. If you have got any disagreements or agreements, whatever, just stick them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, it lets me know you're enjoying it, and subscribe if you do want to see more. Thanks for watching everyone, I'm Hellfire Mage, and I'll see you next time.